Yeah, greetings all. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that these Mzungus, they've got some spirituality. So can you expand on that? Because my understanding is um, that there are people that lack empathy. They're soulless. So I'm just intrigued as to where this spirituality comes from.
Okay, that's a very good question. Don't assume that. Sorry, did you say something there? Yeah. What I'm trying to say is, to have spirituality is not synonymous with it being good. You see, Satanism is spirituality. That's spirituality. Spirituality is in the realm of the spirit. You see, so I'm not necessarily saying that it's good. Okay, but to argue that Europeans don't have spirituality is not correct. They do have spirituality, but it's not our type of spirituality. It's not coming from the same epistemology. It's not coming from the same place. You see, they will take the concept of God, for example, in African spiritual systems. We don't. I was trying to explain this to my family. We don't have the concept of a God. But if that's been put into your head at birth, it's very hard to disabuse yourself from that. But the African concept, we don't have a God. We don't have this man in the sky. That literally don't have that. You see? But their spirituality has God as a man. You see? And the man can incarnate and become whatever. We don't have that. That is spirituality. You see, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad. That's for you to determine that, or what the empirical facts show. But the idea that Europeans don't have spirituality is dangerous. You've got to know that they have spirituality. They most certainly have it. Now, whether it's good or bad, that's for us to investigate. And where they got it from is for us to investigate. You see, that's important as well. Okay, so I hope that explains. I'm not saying that the spirituality is necessarily good, but they have spirituality. They have Christianity. They believe in gods and spirits and angel, and Jesus incarnated and came down as man and so on. That's all spirituality. You see? Now, obviously, some of us don't believe. For example, the Nation of Islam calls that spookism, which is interesting the way they call that spookism. They're not into that. Okay? But to say that they don't have spirituality is not correct. Europeans have spirituality without a doubt.
Okay, thanks for that. So what are your thoughts on the Iceman theory, that they came out of the ice age, so to speak? Hence they're so violent.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the Michael Bradley book, aren't you? The Iceman Inheritance?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I read the book about 15 years ago. Well, I mean, this goes back again to the anthropological argument, the out of Africa theory, you see, that the first humans were African and they developed and spread out to the world. And then the debates are that some Africans got stuck in a certain part of the world and lost their melanin, and their body needed to adapt to the environment. So their hair straightened out and their nose straightened out, and so on. Now, this is anthropology, and it's still up for debate. Okay, that's up for debate. We don't really, there's going to be a number of views about that. Okay, it's up for debate. I would suggest reading Marimba Annie's book, okay, which puts the whole debate on what the Europeans do. Okay, rather than where they come from, let's focus on what they do. And the reason I think that's important, because it's more forward thinking. Okay, it's more forward thinking. and it comes from Malcolm X as well. I mean, I really do study Malcolm X, and I believe in his philosophy and what he does, and I think he's in tune with the general understanding of our epistemology. And Malcolm X focused on what white people do. Okay, so that debate as to whether because they got locked into the Ice Age, it affected them. That was written by a white man called Michael Bradley. Sheikh Anta Diop, which is a black anthropologist, came up with the two cradle theory, which seems to be more realistic. Okay, as certain behaviors are to do with how Europeans have constructed their culture. So that's the best answer I can give you, because it's up for debate. I would say, as a person who studies race, that we should focus on what white people do rather than focusing on where some behaviors come from. Why don't we focus on what they do? And that allows us to take into consideration what Malcolm X said, and Malcolm X said, and I quote him directly, is, I'm not against white people. I'm not against people because they're white. I'm against people who practice racism. And that's my position. Okay, that's my position. I'm not against people because they're white. I'm against people because they practice racism. And that's a very, very profound, intelligent statement. Think carefully what he's saying there. Okay, that's the language of how black people should speak today. Okay, and that allows for people to change their behaviors. Okay, rather than saying your behavior is locked into some theory that's up for debate. That's the least I can do there. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay, so I want to come in there and just
Sure.
go back, I suppose, to the question that Sister Edwina was focusing on in terms of one race, which is the human race, and the word used, humankind. How do these marry up for you? Human race and humankind. What is the difference, and what is how would you compare these two words? Human race.
That'd be mankind.
Hmm?
Mankind, isn't it?
Well, humankind is a kind of human, isn't it? I mean, what's your view on these terms?
Okay. Right. Well, good questions, sister. Really, really good question. I don't deal with that, but I will give you my view.
Yeah.
I don't deal with it. I will give you my view. I believe in the Dogon story. Okay, the African Dogon. I believe in the Dogon African story, narrative of creation. Okay, but if you study that story, which is in Marimba Annie's book, and I have to tell you, the Dogon story is in this book as well. It's in
Okay.
my book.
Okay, fine.
And it's explained simpler in my book than hers. I'm just telling you because that's what my book does. So, the Dogon story is African, and I believe it. I don't believe in Darwin's theory of how we got it. Okay, I'm going by the Dogon story. The Dogon story, and I'll simplify it, and then you study it yourself, suggests that certain people that when God, not God, the Creator made the world, yes, there was a breaking away. Some part of his creation wasn't fully developed and broke away and was barren and wasn't fully developed. Okay, and now roams as the analogy is of a white fox roaming. Okay, the Dogon story does not suggest that white people are not human. I'll contest that with any African on earth. The Dogon story suggests that part of the divine creation broke away, okay, and didn't fully develop. And we see that in the behaviors of Europeans, certainly over the last 500 years, some of the egregious violence that many of them are committing. I wouldn't say all of them. My position is Malcolm X's position. I don't take the position that all whites are doing it, but some are doing it. You can see it right now with the genocide that's going on.
Indeed.
All right. So according to the Dogon story, if you remember Annie's position that the life form that broke away represents white people, that's still God's creation. See how brainwashed we are into this word God.
God.
God. You see, it's in your head. And even when you become conscious, it's still there.
Yeah.
The Creator, when the Creator made that womb, but it wasn't fully developed, and that creation from the Creator broke away. And the Creator was calling it back, but it rose because that being was twin. There was two of them. God made things in complementary. The Creator made things in complementary form, and it broke away. So it hasn't got the other half of itself. So therefore, it's incomplete. There's nothing in that story that suggests if that creature represents white people, that they're not human. And I believe that, because when an African, and some black people are saying this in our community, but then I'd ask this question. When an African conceives with a European woman, her womb creates an African.
Yes.
And I'd like any African on the earth to tell me that that's not the case. We have produced African people from the womb of a European woman. So she must be human to produce that. Okay, so I'm not buying into any of that kind of conspiracy stuff. I'm going into the Dogon story, okay, which is they are, if you take them as representing white people, there's a certain lacking in the behavior. And I've explained it in my book. And it's in remember, it's Annie's book anyway, but it's very dense. Okay, so that's my position. And it appears to be Malcolm X's position as well. Okay, but there's a lot of there's a lot of people who've developed, because we're an oppressed people, there's a lot of people on the internet coming up with stuff that they're just coming up with. There's no real evidence for it. Okay, so I'm sticking to the Dogon story. Okay, and I'd like a black person to tell me, how is it that you can, a white woman can conceive an African if she's not human? I'd like to know.
No, because there's the recessive and the recessive gene, and what's the other one in terms of African people? We've got the stronger gene, dominant and recessive. So and everything comes from black.
Absolutely,
Right. So it is possible for a white woman who engages and is fertilized, or eggs fertilized by a black man or an African man, for her to give birth to an African child, because the gene is dominant. Yeah, because
you're making perfect sense.
Yeah.
But there's lots of videos on YouTube with black people dressing up and saying all sorts of nonsense. Okay, they just say it. Okay, and people buy into it, and also they twist what Frances Cress Welsing said. Frances Cress Welsing said she was talking about the production of melanocytes.
Yeah.
Okay, that whites don't produce the melanocytes. That's a fact. They know they don't. Okay, and so we know that. And she was saying that therefore our genes are dominant. We know that.
Yeah.
They know that. We know that. What Frances Cress Welsing was saying, she used their psychology, Freudian psychiatry, to say that's why they behave. That's an excellent theory that we should consider. That's why they behave. That's what she said.
So,
right?
So with that, then, would you use the term that they are a kind of human, but they're not actually human? They're a kind of human.
No, I'm not. I don't. No. The Dogon. Go by the Dogon story. go and as I said, it's in Narumba Annie's book. It's in that book, and it's in my book, broken down clearly. It's the creation. God made the creation. It's incomplete. It's incomplete. Now, that's the question that you need to focus on. It's incomplete. I think, no, I don't buy that. I don't say that they're not human. I'm not buying. I don't buy that. And the reason I don't buy that is because we've produced African. Look, the Caribbean is absolutely rife with people who are mixed with their genes. Practically everyone in the Caribbean is
White genes, white genes, do you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there's not such thing as a white gene, but let's say European ancestry. Okay?
European ancestry, a large people, a large portion,
Practically a good 98% of every single person in the Caribbean is mixed with that. And a good chunk of Africans are mixed with that on the African continent as well, producing constant Africans. And yet you get people turn around and say, I'm not buying into any of that. I don't think so. My position is the same as Malcolm X's. That's my position. Okay. We should focus on what they do.
Well, that's true, and I think to me the original people and the breakaway, because people moved from Africa. Because don't forget the whole Earth was one, was one, and then it's broke away, and that's why we got North America, South America, Africa. We've broken away because of the plate, the shifting of the plates, the tectonic plates. Yeah, so people have moved away to different parts of the planet. Yes. Northeast, southeast, south, north, west. People have moved away. And the further they've got away from the core, the less human they are. And you can assess them by their behavior. That's what I'm looking at.
Okay. So you want to put it down to environment, yeah? That's what
I think environment plays a very important part of it.
All right. Okay. If that's what you want to believe, that's fine. I would say that, I read Miranda Annie's book about 10 years ago, and I found it quite intense, but maybe I need to read it again and see what she's got to say. But also we should both study Cheikh Anta Diop's two cradle theory. Okay? Cheikh Anta Diop's two cradle theory. All right. We can assume stuff, but we need what is called empirical evidence for our beliefs. Yeah. I think what's important, sister, is you knowing that, and how are we liberated by finding out these things? We should focus on things that are directly related to our liberation. Like I know a black person, a guy who I knew way back in the 90s, and I bumped into him about 2 months ago, and he's still where he was. And guess where he is? Oh, black people built the pyramids. Oh, black people built I got evidence. Okay, we built the pyramids. All right, so how's that going to stop the system of domination?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get focused, on the real task at hand.
Yeah.
A lot of that
time.
Yes, they're tapping out.
Yeah.
And also an excuse not to do anything. Oh, white people are some sort of they're another planet, so therefore, and they just get tied in with conspiracy theories when actually we have systemic structures of racism. We're on the brink of maybe getting reparations. Maybe we won't, maybe we will. We mustn't be consumed by stuff that doesn't relate directly to our liberation. That's what I'm saying, sister.
Okay,
But the good thing about it, I do touch on the Dogon story in here. I do. I touch on it in here. And I break it down very simply, more than other books. It's very simple in that book there. And I say that we should take because anthropology is still up for debate. Let me tell you, sister, why it's up for debate. Some black people are still Darwinists. Sheikh Anta Diop, brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant, Darwinist. Ben Yochanan, brilliant, Darwinist. Who's the other one? He did, not Charles, Sheikh Anta Diop, Ivan Sertima, brilliant, Darwinist, and another one. I can't remember his name. All right. They're Darwinists because that was what was given to them. Okay, that's where we are as black people. We're still very much consumed by European epistemology, which is knowledge production. Okay, we haven't written our own theory of how we got here, and until black people write their own theory, I think it's safe to simply go to the Dogon story. That's the safest thing to do because you know that's coming from you. Darwin's theory of evolution doesn't come from us.
I understand that.
Now, I'm not dissing. I just want to make this absolutely clear. Okay, but we, as black people, this is the time to be clear and not be weak. Okay, I'm not dissing Ivan Sertima, Ben Yochanan. Who's the other one I mentioned? Sheikh Anta Diop, and the other one I can't remember his name. I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying that
Chancellor Williams.
No, not Chancellor. He wasn't an anthropologist. But the point is, I'm not dissing them. I'm just saying where we were as a people, what they did at that time was we needed it, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But now we're here. We have to be where we are. Okay, and where we are now is we need a young black person to go to their universities and come out and say, right, I've got our own theory of how we got there. We haven't done that yet. And none of those people I mentioned, they're all Darwinists, and Darwin was a racist. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the best thing black people can do is what Remember Annie did. Just focus on the Dogon story as a representation of white behavior. Okay? That's it. The Dogon story is enough. Okay? And that's what I believe. I don't think that we should, because it's all up for debate. And when we talk about anthropology, we're really talking Darwinism.
Yeah.
Because Darwin was the first
But
person.
we haven't got any black anthropologists.
We have, but they're all ensconced, they're all deeply involved in European anthropology.
Eurocentric
Our
anthropology.
past ones and the modern ones. Now, if we are the mothers and fathers of humanity, didn't you think we should have our own theory of how we got here?
Well, absolutely. But I'm sure in your book, you've got the reasons or the rationale as to why we haven't got our own.
We haven't got one because we haven't arrived yet as a people. So we need to increase our knowledge. The safest bet at the moment is to acknowledge the Dogon story, which comes directly from our own epistemology. I love Sheikh Anta Diop, but I'm not buying his Darwinism. That's not going to happen. Okay? It's not happening.
Not if it was a racist, it's pointless.
No, Sheikh Anta Diop is not a racist. And
No. Darwin.
yeah, sure. All those brothers that I mentioned are brilliant, and they suppress the racism that was going on in the European academies. So they were brilliant people. But I'm just saying, where we are now, we have to move on. We have to move on, okay, and not be Darwinists, because that doesn't come from our own epistemology, and we mustn't spend inordinate time trying to discuss things that we can't answer.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Howard. We need to maybe go on to Yvonne.
Yeah, go ahead.